So I think my initial thoughts after leaving the MFM were, how do I support my wife through this? Because I'm not the one holding the child and I can only be there so much for her being the husband. But how can I prepare myself to help her through the next, 20 weeks of pregnancy was my biggest thought. And then at the same time, how do I cope as a dad and understanding that my daughter that's, a year at the time, a year and a couple months, will not have a sibling here in the next, 4 or 5 months. I think that those two things, Ezekiel and Jade, were at the forefront of my mind.
I think after I left, after leaving the MFM, I was just in shock. I don't think I could really process what was said. The only thing I could remember was, your baby might not live. Like, that was just, and it was hard because we had to go pick up Jade, and she was with my mom. And I just remember feeling so hopeless, but I had this little girl waiting for me who had no idea what we had just experienced. So I just remember leaving and not really knowing how I was going to tell the news to my mom. I just felt lost. So some of the things I did to cope were, maybe it wasn't the best thing, but I did a lot of research. I found lots of stories through Instagram, through hashtagging #TrySme13. I Googled a lot more than I probably should have. But in that moment, when I spoke with my closest friends, I remember one of them specifically gave me a name of a friend who she knew had gone through something similar. And so the first thing I did was reach out to her, and she was so kind, and she basically just gave me ways that she coped. And even though we didn't have the diagnosis yet, I held on to that, and I tried to do that for myself.
And I think just the biggest thing for me as far as coping was turning to family. And like Ezekiel mentioned, leaving the MFM appointment was difficult because Jade is so full of energy and life and makes us smile so much. And so just turning to my mother-in-law, the fact that she understands her daughter more than I could, knowing that she raised her, she gave birth to her. And I think Ezekiel telling her mom in that moment gave me peace in the sense that her mom understood what we were going through. And I think we waited a couple days after that and then called my parents over and told them what we were going through just to have that support. But obviously not everybody has that support. So like Ezekiel mentioned, finding people that have gone through this similar, diagnosis, whether it's trisomy 13, 18, 21, whatever it might be, and, reaching out to them, because I think the fact that we went through this and people reached out to Ezekiel when we had gone through it 3 months prior, Ezekiel was able to be, a resource for them, whether they had family or not to turn to.
So when I researched about trisomy 13 and tried to find more information, I found that there was a lack of information. Statistics are outdated. And so there's really not much to go off of. You leave the internet feeling devastated because you are 100% certain that your baby will not make it. And so that was what I found through Googling and researching, just because if you find any medical page online, it just spits out old statistics. And a lot of these statistics are also based off of people not knowing what options they have, And so this can be really hard. And so I think for me, the best thing to do was reach out to people online that had gone through these experiences, because they were showing a different side than Google was showing. So an amniocentesis it's a test where they will collect amniotic fluid, and the way that they do that is it's basically like a 20-minute procedure where they put a needle into my belly, and I just have to stay really still, and they collect about 30 milliliters of amniotic fluid. And with that fluid, they go ahead and test it. I believe we did like a fish result, which was one of the fastest ones. I think they could have it within 72 hours. And it was a weekend, so I remember we weren't going to get the results until a Monday. And then we would know for sure if there was trisomy. But then this fish results would also go into depth about if all of his DNA was filled with an extra chromosome, if it was only part of it. So it was very, very detailed, but within the first 72 hours, we would know for sure if he had full trisomy 13.